In the annals of American music, few empires rose as fast or fell as hard as Death Row Records. It was a cultural juggernaut, a billion-dollar machine built on raw talent, audacious ambition, and a foundation of fear. But its story isn't just about the music. It's a dark, cinematic saga, a gangster epic defined by a central, devastating paradox. Its success was built on an image of gangsta rap authenticity, defiance, and street life connection, the very elements that contain the inherent vulnerabilities leading to its ultimate collapse. And it all begins and ends with one man, Marion Suge Knight Jr. The final chapter of his story was written in a Compton parking lot in 2015, after a confrontation with two men, Terry Carter, a music executive, and Clay "Bone" Sloan, a technical advisor on the Straight Outta Compton movie. Suge used his truck as a weapon. He ran them down, killing Terry Carter.
There is some new and disturbing video that will impact the murder case against media mogul Suge Knight. The video obtained by TMZ shows the January 29th incident where Knight's truck apparently runs over the two men. The truck backs up, hits one man. Seconds later, the truck comes back and runs over that man. We've had to, digitize the video because it's very violent. And then it also runs over another. And one of the men who were run over died. Knight says that for his part, he was trying to get away because he thought he was being ambushed and might actually be shot. Suge Knight is expected back in court at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time today, and CNN's Paul Verkaman is at the courthouse in Los Angeles.
The altercation began with Suge arriving on the set of a movie promo where he was reportedly bad-mouthing Bone, prompting a confrontation. In a deeply tragic turn, Carter, a friend to both men, was ironically there to mediate a business dispute and was caught in the crossfire. The final, damning act of a life lived on the razor's edge. Before we dive deeper, be sure to subscribe to the Real Hip Hop Fiend channel. But to understand the fall, you must first understand the rise. And to understand the rise, you have to go back to the streets of Compton, where the story of hip-hop's bloodiest record label truly began. Marion Hugh Suge Knight Jr. wasn't supposed to be a criminal. He was supposed to be a football star. He was a dominant defensive end at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, a man with a singular focus on a single dream, the NFL. He was even briefly signed by the Los Angeles Rams, but his professional career was short-lived. His NFL dream was over. Even before his professional career ended, his personal life was marked by a pattern of violence and aggression. Reports allege he had a history of shaking down students in high school, and in a bizarre incident, allegedly cut off his girlfriend's hair in college out of jealousy. But the discipline and aggression forged on the football field would soon be channeled into a far more ruthless game on the streets of LA. Disappointed by the game, his ambition shifted. He returned to Los Angeles and found his footing not in a stadium, but as a bodyguard for hire. This was his apprenticeship. Working as a bouncer for nightclubs, and later for celebrities like R&B star Bobby Brown, he learned the fundamentals of the entertainment business. He saw a world where power wasn't just in talent, but in control, and where the law was a suggestion, not a rule. Suge saw an opportunity in the deep-seated resentment that was simmering at Ruthless Records. Dr. Dre and his brilliant collaborator, the DOC, were fed up, inspired by the precedent set by Ice Cube's 1989 departure over financial disputes. After a near-fatal car accident at 142nd and Central left the DOC with a crushed larynx, Suge saw his chance. He visited the DOC daily in the hospital, bringing his mother along, building a false sense of trust. He convinced the DOC that he was being cheated out of money for his uncredited songwriting. Suge wasn't just a bodyguard, he was a master manipulator. By 1991, the fuse was lit. Dr. Dre and the DOC wanted out of Ruthless Records. But this wasn't a corporate negotiation, it was a street confrontation. According to Jerry Heller, on the day of the meeting, Suge and his men arrived at the office, but they didn't come with contracts. They came with weapons. Eazy-E would later claim in a lawsuit that they arrived with lead pipes and baseball bats, and threatened to cause him physical harm unless he released Dre and the DOC, as well as other artists like Jewel and Michele from their contracts.
Suge tried to destroy my record company with the help of others, Dre.
Releasing Dre and DOC from Ruthless.
This was a physical act of aggression. It was a hostile takeover in the truest sense of the word. But Suge's rage wasn't always directed at rivals. In a widely reported incident, after finding the office empty, he took out his frustration on Heller's 2 security guards, reportedly forcing them to crawl on the floor and bark like dogs. This brutal business practice, built on humiliation and fear, would define Death Row Records until its final day. To fund this new brutal venture, Suge turned to more creative methods. The legendary incident with pop star Vanilla Ice is a brutal testament to his early tactics. After learning that Vanilla Ice had used a sample from a song written by an acquaintance of his, Suge and his crew reportedly tried to lure him into a van with Bloods and Crips. But the final confrontation was even more terrifying. In a hotel room, Suge allegedly dangled Robert Van Winkle from a balcony to coerce him into signing over the rights and royalties for Ice Ice Baby. This extortion provided the crucial illicit seed money, the royalties from Ice Ice Baby, that directly funded the early operations of Death Row Records, bankrolling its first studio on Westwood Boulevard. The public saw a new venture backed by a powerful new mogul. What they didn't know was that its parent company, Godfather Entertainment, was funded by Michael Harry O. Harris, a man in prison, a drug kingpin serving time for attempted murder. His investment was a staggering $1.5 million in exchange for a 50% stake. The money was not just a loan, it was an investment in a criminal enterprise, orchestrated from his prison cell through his attorney, David Kenner. Adding a bizarre twist to this gangster story, Harry O had also established a legitimate business front, producing a Broadway play that helped launch the career of a young Denzel Washington. The acts of violence weren't isolated incidents, they were a regular part of doing business. In a chilling and widely reported incident, Suge was charged with assault and robbery for pistol whipping 2 aspiring rappers, George and Linwood Stanley. Their crime? They were using the studio phone he needed. The reason was trivial. The violence was absolute. This was not an exception. It was the rule. A pattern of aggressive, legally questionable, and often violent business practices was set from the very beginning. Perhaps the most chilling example, as widely reported, involved House of Pain and Cypress Hill's manager, Happy Walters. After a business dispute, Walters reportedly disappeared from an ATM, only to be found days later, his head shaved and his body covered in what were believed to be cigar burns. He refused to tell the police who was responsible. The message was clear. The new company, founded by Dr. Dre, Suge Knight, the DOC, Dick Griffey, and Michael Harry O. Harris, initially considered the names Future Shock and Def Row, a nod to Def Jam. But they settled on Death Row Records, a defiant statement chosen to reflect a no-coming-back attitude and a direct connection to the criminal world, after formally securing naming rights from Unknown DJ in July of 1991. While it's widely believed they secured the name from a DJ, it's also been reported that co-founder Michael Harry O. Harris claimed he came up with the name due to his time on Death Row.
$1.5 million investment. Until I brought Death Row into the equation, on paper as a company, there was no Death Row. I actually set up GF Entertainment as a parent company and made Death Row a subsidiary. And so there was 100% ownership through my trust.
The name Death Row, who came up with it?
I did. Over the years, a lot of people started saying, oh, I started, but no. I started it because of my situation.
The brand was now official. The stage was set. Its first public move wasn't an album, but a soundtrack, the 1992 single Deep Cover, which established Dr. Dre as a solo artist and introduced the world to his protege, Snoop Doggy Dogg. The Kingpin had found his kingdom, and the sound of the streets was about to take over the world.
House with the pound like every day, and I'm right back up in you with Dr. Dre.
With the release of The Chronic in 1992, the sound of Death Row Records wasn't confined to the streets of Compton. The album not only peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200 and went triple platinum, selling 3 million copies, but it also positioned Dr. Dre as a top 10 selling American artist of 1993. The label was ready to launch its next star. On November 23, 1993, Snoop Dogg released his solo debut, Doggy Style. The album was an instant phenomenon, selling nearly 1 million copies in its first week alone. With a style described as laconic and relaxed, massively confident, Snoop became a global superstar, a household name whose voice was everywhere, from music videos to late-night talk shows. Death Row wasn't just a label. It was now a cultural force. The world saw the platinum plaques, the hit singles, and the lavish parties. At its peak, Death Row was pretty much unstoppable, raking in over $100 million in annual revenue and achieving a reputation for having one of the best 4-year runs in hip-hop history. The label sold nearly 150 million albums worldwide.
Death Row is going on here tonight. The new explosion of the most powerful record label to come out into the market that I've ever seen in my life. And I mean that. Death Row, Death Row, Death Row. That's what's happening tonight.
Its sound, a G-funk subgenre with fat, blunted Parliament funkadelic beats, soulful backing vocals, and live instruments, was a force of nature. It was credited with killing 80s-style rap, forcing established artists to adapt, and it broke down barriers for artists of color in a white executive-dominated industry. Death Row was everywhere, featured on the front page of the Source magazine and in heavy rotation on MTV and radio. But inside the company's Wilshire Boulevard headquarters, the atmosphere was one of paranoia and fear. The tension was constant, and the violence that had founded the label was now its lifeblood. Snoop Dogg, who was a witness to it all, would later describe the environment with 2 chilling words: everyone was in his stranglehold. This was the hidden cost of their success. The financial gains temporarily overshadowed the notoriety, creating a dangerous and unsustainable feedback loop. Don't forget to subscribe to the Real Hip Hop Fiend channel for more stories like this. The first crack in the empire's gilded facade appeared when Dr. Dre's disillusionment with the toxic culture grew. Even its leader was not immune. Dr. Dre's own criminal record included an 8-month prison sentence in 1994 for a DUI. He witnessed an engineer being savagely beaten for the seemingly trivial offense of rewinding a tape too far. This wasn't just discipline, it was pure, unchecked terror. That horrifying scene was the final straw, making him realize the creative freedom he craved was impossible under Suge's brutal rule. Dre's departure was not a negotiation. It was an escape. He left the label he helped build, a move that left an irreplaceable creative void. The gangster image became a dangerous reality in August 1993. After a traffic stop in Los Angeles, a car carrying Snoop Dogg and his bodyguard McKinley Lee was approached. A verbal altercation quickly escalated into a physical confrontation, which ended with Snoop's bodyguard fatally shooting the other man in what was later ruled as self-defense. Snoop, a young superstar at the height of his fame, was charged with first-degree murder, and the media descended upon him. According to legal reports, Suge Knight advised Snoop to turn himself in only after securing legal counsel. It took 2 years for the case to go to trial, but after a tense and highly publicized battle, Snoop Dogg and his bodyguard were acquitted on all charges. Suge Knight was a predator, always searching for the next source of power. In 1995, he founded in Tupac Shakur. Tupac was in prison, financially ruined, and abandoned by his label, Time Warner. This was the perfect opportunity. Suge flew to New York and bailed Tupac out by posting his $1.4 million bail. A breakdown of the bail shows that $850,000 was posted by a corporate guarantee by the bail bond company, $250,000 by a check from Suge, and the remaining amount by a trust deed for the home of Suge's mother. The price for his freedom? A 3-album deal with Death Row, a contract that legally bound Tupac's genius to Suge's empire, signed on a deal memo that was little more than a piece of paper. Tupac had his freedom, but he had traded one gilded cage for another. This move, while a masterstroke, intensified the already simmering East Coast-West Coast rivalry and amplified the label's existing culture of violence, rendering its peak a moment of extreme fragility. The war began on August 3, 1995. On the stage of the Source Awards in New York, surrounded by a hostile crowd, Suge Knight made his move. He took a shot directly at his rival, Bad Boy Records CEO Puff Daddy. He looked out at the audience and said, "Anyone out there want to be a star? Without the executive producer trying to be all in the video? Come to Death Row." That single comment was the spark that ignited the East-West Coast rivalry, a blood feud that would end in tragedy.
Second of all, I'd like to thank my whole entire Death Row family on both sides, you know what I'm saying? I'd like to tell Tupac to keep his guards up. We ride with him. And one other thing I'd like to say, any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing. Come to Death Row.
The feuding wasn't just on stage, it was on the streets. It escalated from a verbal battle to an exchange of fire in the Atlanta club shooting where Death Row associate Jake Robles was killed, with Knight accusing Combs. A few months earlier, the tension was high after the Quad Studios shooting in New York, where Tupac was shot and robbed, and famously gave the middle finger to Biggie and Bad Boy affiliates.
Well, tell me what happened at the recording studios in Times Square.
I got shot 5 times. I walked in, some dudes walked in and shot me up.
I already took 5 bullets. And if I can help it, I don't plan on taking no more.
Do you know who shot you? No. Is that a no or is that a maybe? No.
As far as foes and enemies and all that, I really don't care. My only fear of death is coming back reincarnated.
So does that mean that you also have no idea why they shot you?
No, I have no idea why they shot me.
Tupac took the feud to another level. His track Hit 'Em Up was not just a song. It was a lyrical declaration of war. He directly named and insulted Puff Daddy and the notorious B.I.G., cementing the rivalry in the public consciousness and ensuring there was no turning back.
First don't fuck your bitch in the click you claim. West side when we ride, come equipped with game.
The war would reach its tragic climax on the night of September 7th, 1996, in Las Vegas. After attending a Mike Tyson fight, Tupac and Suge were caught on a security camera at the MGM Grand Hotel, getting into a vicious fight with a man named Orlando Anderson. It was a chaotic, violent brawl that served as the final link in a chain of events that would end in tragedy. Minutes later, Suge and Tupac were driving down Las Vegas Boulevard in Suge's black BMW. It's a critical, damning detail. Suge Knight was on probation at the time. This trip itself was a violation, a reckless move that would have severe repercussions for him and his label. At a red light, a white Cadillac pulled alongside, and from the passenger seat a hand emerged holding a gun. A volley of shots rang out, striking the passenger side of the car. 4 bullets tore into Tupac Shakur. The king had been shot. The empire was bleeding. And for the first time, it would not recover. In a final, chilling twist to the night's events, Suge Knight has publicly claimed that Tupac's last words to him were, "I love you," a claim that directly contradicts official police reports.
What was the last thing that he said to you?
They loved me. We was on the thing that was getting there. I like, Pac, we the last one left. When we talk, this is how we talking. He said, homie, I'm straight. I love you, homie, I'm gonna be straight. I love you too. Woo. That's what it was.
On the afternoon of September 13th, 1996, Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. The king was gone. The empire was bleeding out, and for the first time, its leader would be powerless to stop it. Suge Knight was not arrested for the shooting of Tupac. He was arrested for the fight at the MGM Grand Hotel. The incident was deemed a probation violation from a previous assault charge, and in February 1997, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. His iron grip on the label was gone. With the kingpin behind bars, the palace began to crumble. The fear that had kept everyone in line was gone, replaced by a desperate scramble for survival. The first to leave was Dr. Dre, who had already escaped, but his departure was a sign of what was to come. In 1997, the label's last remaining superstar, Snoop Dogg, fought his way out of his contract. In his own words, he stated that at death row, everything was in Suge Knight's name. A stark admission that highlighted the exploitative nature of the contracts and the complete lack of artist ownership. As the artists fled, the lawsuits piled up. Artists like Nate Dogg, Corrupt, Daz Dillinger, The Lady of Rage, and Michelle all departed, citing the label's instability. Just 1 month after Tupac's murder, federal authorities launched a RICO racketeering probe into Death Row's history and business practices, forcing the label to divert its dwindling resources to a legal defense and officially classifying it as a criminal enterprise. Suge notoriously lavish spending on luxury cars and jewelry had already depleted assets. But the final, poetic, killing blow came from within. The label's co-founder, Michael Harry O. Harris, was in prison. But his ex-wife, Lydia Harris, was not. She filed a lawsuit claiming she had been defrauded out of hundreds of millions in profits, asserting she had helped manage the label and even discovered Snoop Dogg. The case went to court, and the court ruled against the label. In 2005, she won a staggering $107 million default judgment against Knight. The reason? Discovery violations. Suge and his lawyers, in a final act of arrogant defiance, simply refused to answer questions or provide documents to the court. Their contempt for the law was no longer a strategy. It was their suicide note. A business built on criminal money was ultimately destroyed by the very legal system it flaunted. Unable to pay this massive judgment, Death Row Records officially filed for bankruptcy in 2006. The financial injustice was stark and deeply personal. Many former artists were still owed substantial royalties, including Snoop Dogg, $2 million, Nate Dogg, $5 million, and Dr. Dre, $8 million. After the bankruptcy, only Tupac's estate received a payment, a paltry $75,000, while others were left with nothing. The remnants of the empire, the name, the logo, the master tapes, were bought and sold multiple times over the next decade in a bizarre corporate afterlife. The brand, once a symbol of defiance and power, was reduced to a tarnished asset in a portfolio. It was a stark descent, first bought by Wide Awake Entertainment for $18 million in 2009, then by Entertainment One, E1, for a reported $280 million in 2013, before eventually landing in the hands of toy giant Hasbro, who acquired all of E1 in a staggering $4 billion deal. The Death Row brand, a symbol of a brutal street war, now existed in the same corporate portfolio as My Little Pony. The journey through these corporate owners demonstrated that despite its operational failure, the brand itself retained immense value as intellectual property. Suge Knight's final act came in 2018, when he was sentenced to 28 years in prison for the death of his friend, Terry Carter. His life ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. A man defeated not by rivals, but by his own relentless violence. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe to the Real Hip Hop Fiend channel. But the story wasn't over. In a powerful act of defiance and redemption, Snoop Dogg, the artist who had escaped the chaos years before, acquired the Death Row brand in 2022. This was not just a business deal, it was a homecoming. The artist who once said everything was in Suge Knight's name could now proudly state, "It feels good to have ownership of the label I was part of at the beginning. The ultimate redemption." He reclaimed the legacy, transforming it from a cautionary tale of corporate mismanagement into a testament of artist empowerment and ownership. The label's distinctive sound helped shape the course of the genre and continues to influence modern artists like Kendrick Lamar and Kanye West. The entire Death Row archive of unreleased music and interviews is now being digitized by Iron Mountain Media and archival services for future licensing, docuseries, and preservation. Ensuring the label's chaotic, brilliant history is safeguarded not by gangsters, but by archivists. The empire built on blood had finally returned to its rightful owner. The criminal enterprise was dead, but the art and the artists had finally found their way home.